Okay, so subtracting integers, which is the same, is adding the opposite. Okay, so if I'm subtracting two integers, it's the same exact thing as adding the opposite. Opposite meaning if I have a negative number, its opposite is positive. If I have a positive number, the opposite would be that same number but negative. Okay. So looking at an example, I've got negative 7 minus 3. I'm subtracting an integer, which is the same as adding its opposite. So I was first subtracting positive 3. It's the same exact thing as adding the opposite, which is adding negative 3. Okay. So now we have just an addition problem, which we know how to do that. Same signs means I add. There are two negatives, so my answer is negative as well. Okay. So what we're doing is we're circling that minus whatever number, then you're adding a plus sign in between so that it gives you an addition problem. Okay. So 6 minus 15, that means I'm circling minus 15 and it becomes a negative 15, and I'm adding those two numbers together. So I have 6 plus negative 15. Okay. So do I have same signs or opposite signs? Opposite. So am I adding or subtracting? Subtracting. So 15 minus 6 gives me what? Is it negative or positive? Negative, because my absolute value of negative 15 is greater than the absolute value of 6. Okay. Negative 7 minus 8. That means I'm circling that minus 8, and you're adding that addition sign in between. So now you have negative 7 plus negative 8. So what does that give me?
Negative 15.
Good. Negative 15. Questions? Okay. 4 minus 16. So that becomes the problem 4 plus negative 16. And what does that give me? Negative 12, yes. I had different signs, so I've got a positive and a negative. So I'm subtracting, keeping the sign of that larger number. Okay. Negative 3 minus 12 becomes negative 3 plus negative 12. Same sign, so I'm, what? Adding, so 3 plus 12 gives me 15. They were both negative, so that means that answer has to be negative. Any questions? If we're figuring out on a number line, it's exactly the same. So you're still changing that subtraction problem to an addition problem, and then that's exactly what we learned on Wednesday or Tuesday, whenever it was. So you're starting at 0, you're going to the left negative 7, and then you're adding negative 3 to that, so you're going to the left 3 more. Okay. Or, like this other one, 2 minus 4 is the same as saying 2 plus negative 4. So I'm starting at 0, I'm going to the right 2, and then from there I'm going back 4. So you end up at negative 2. Okay. So nothing changes on the number line. Questions on that? Okay. Subtracting a negative integer is the same as adding an integer. Okay. So that means you're subtracting a negative. That means you have minus negative, whatever. Minus a negative number, right? So those two negatives make a positive. So I've got 9 minus negative 2. So those two negatives come together and make a positive. So now I have 9 plus 2, which is just 11. So 3 minus negative 5, both of those negative signs are coming together to make a positive. So now I have 3 plus 5, which gives me 8. $18 minus negative 2. Two negatives make a positive. So 18 plus 2 gives me 20. Negative 5 minus negative 11. Same thing, those two negatives make a positive. So now I have negative 5 plus 11. So am I adding or subtracting? subtracting, so 11 minus 5 gives me 6, and is it positive or negative? Positive. And that last example, that means I have negative 12 plus 9, which is what? Good, negative 3. Any questions on that? Not too bad, huh? Okay, what about if we have some algebraic expressions? So I've got A minus B minus C, and then they tell you what A, B, and C are. So you are plugging them in. So A is 4, so I have 4 minus B, which is 3, minus C, which is negative 10. Okay, so you have to remember that in the problem you're subtracting both times. So don't forget, or don't confuse yourself and say, oh, I've got a minus there, so I'm just plugging in 10, because it already is minus 10. It's minus negative 10. So then, of course, 4 minus 3 gives me 1. So now you're left with the problem 1 minus negative 10, which changes to 1 plus 10. Last one, I've got n minus L plus m. So n is what? Negative 10 minus L, which is 7, plus m, which is what? Negative 3. Alright, so first off, I want to take care of those first two numbers. But before I do that, I'm subtracting a positive, which is the same as adding its opposite. So I'm going to say that that's negative 10 plus negative 7 plus negative 3. So I still want to add negative 10 and negative 7 first. So what does that give me? Negative 10 plus negative 7. Negative 17. And then I still have to add negative 3 to that. So what's my final answer? Negative 20. Any questions? So if you're subtracting a negative, it all changes to what? A what? A positive. If you're just subtracting a positive, you're adding its opposite, meaning that you are circling that minus whatever number and adding a plus sign in between. So you're changing all of your subtraction problems to addition problems. Got it? Makes sense? Any questions? Okay, your homework is page, what's it say over there? 78 and 79. Numbers, Carson, what does that say? 10 through 34? 10 through 34. Thanks. So hopefully you can get the majority of that knocked out today in class and not have to do much over the 3D weekend. You guys, 20 minutes.